I'd like to show you just a little bit about the editing functions found within the Photos app for Apple users. Now, most people think that this app is mostly just to organize your albums, which it is very good for. Right here you can see my list of albums, but one function that's very useful but unfortunately less known is the editing function found within the app. So here, if you come up to the top and click Edit, it opens out a little side menu with these different functions. Now they can be a little bit overwhelming at first. You'll see things you recognize like filters, but far more useful functions exist, such as under Adjust. So to start out, I'd like to teach you 5 basic steps that you can do with this app to make any of your pictures better and more professional looking and vibrant. With just these 5 steps, you can have photos that you're proud to share on Facebook, social media, even the walls of your own home. So to start, step 1 is check the Enhance. So this Enhance tool right here is basically the autopilot for editing. When you click this, you'll see subtle changes. Sometimes it increases the contrast to show you more detail, like in the hair right here, but it also does things to saturation. Sometimes this is a very useful tool and it's good on its own. Other times your pictures will need just a little bit more work. So here, let me undo it so we can see that change again. There we go. So while it did some good things, it also made this grass section look just a little too saturated and a little too fake. Here, I'll do it again so we can see. See, there's a little bit of a hot spot there now. So in order to avoid that, we'll go ahead and skip on the Enhance function and undo it. Step number 2 is decide on cropping. So if you come here to the crop tool, you'll see that you can rotate the picture either way. For our purposes today, I'm going to go ahead and just leave it at 0 rotation. But we can also grab the borders here and crop it in if we wanted a close-up of his face, let's say. But I think that for this image, this is the appropriate cropping. He's following the rule of thirds. He's got his face over here in a top quadrant. So it's a good composed photograph. If you have a photograph where his face is dead center, you can even use the cropping tool to make the photo adhere to that rule of thirds and just look a little bit better composed. So that covers cropping. Let's go ahead and move on to step 3, which is alignment. Now we already talked just a little bit about the rule of thirds and the alignment, which is basically dividing this picture into 3 sections vertically and 3 sections horizontally. Now you want the focus of your pictures to lie on one of those lines. So I would say here the alignment is perfect because his eyes are right on one of those divisions into thirds, which is very good because studies have been done to show that those lines are where our eyes go automatically in a photo. So if we want to emphasize something, we want that to be on those lines. And when you come to crop, you can actually see those lines within the editing app, which is kind of a helpful tool to know. So for alignment, it looks like we're doing very well. Let's go ahead and move on to step 4, which is adjust the color and contrast. So here we can come to this little adjust function right here, and you'll see kind of a fold out of all kinds of different edits. So to start, let's go ahead and look at the contrast. Contrast is a very useful tool, as you can see here. You can kind of see the difference. If you don't have enough contrast, everything gets washed out. If you have too much contrast, detail gets lost because it's a little bit too dark, you lose color, and things happen. So right here at 0, you can see there's just a little bit of a film over the image almost. So if we go ahead and drag this out, let's say maybe to a 20, that looks pretty good. That looks a little bit sharper. And you can see here if we undo it, that film kind of comes back a little bit. So let's go ahead and take it to that 20. That looked pretty good. Now, what else can we do to the image? Well, we can play with saturation just a little bit to see how everything goes. If we use too much saturation, it becomes kind of distorted in terms of color. Pale skin tones become a sallow yellow, the greens become a little overpowering. If we don't have any saturation, that's how we get black and white images. So right here at 0, it looks pretty good. I would maybe take it up just to about a 15, just to add a little bit of that color. Now black point, that's literally just how much darkness is in the image. So if we increase it all the way, every tone in the image will get a little bit more black to it. If we take it all the way down, everything becomes a little bit whitewashed. So right here at 0, we're pretty good. One of the best functions for black point is to increase the sharpness of an image. As you can see there, it gives you more defined lines. So we can take that up maybe to a 40, let's say. And now that we've kind of darkened this image up, we kind of need to revisit the lightness as well. So let's play with the highlights. We don't want to do anything there. We see that it's kind of distorting it. And shadows, we can increase or decrease. I would maybe take shadows up to about a 15, just to add a little light to the image. And exposure is one of the best ways to lighten an image. If we want it to look light and airy, we can increase that exposure just a little bit, but you have to be careful because if you go too much, it washes details out. So I would say right about here, we're looking pretty good. Everything looks to be in better detail. We're seeing a little more detail from the contrast and black point in his hair. We avoided some of the hot spot issue here, and we've got a pretty trim, good-looking photo. There's just one step left to help perfect this image, and that is step number 5, image retouching. And that's the last function here that you'll see in the editing panel. For this, it's helpful sometimes to zoom in, and this retouch function is essentially a blur brush, and it will actually remove blemishes. As you see there, it disappears. This is often a favorite for many clients. They love to remove these little blemishes, and it's actually a pretty effective way to do it without having to purchase a more extravagant photo editing tool. So right here, we can take out some of those blemishes. In this image, he doesn't really seem to have any bags under his eyes, but in some that you do, you can take the brush right along here, and it gets rid of those. You just have to be a little bit careful because if you get too close to a dark image, it will distort it a little bit and it'll be obvious. So when you're doing it, less is more as far as the retouch tool goes. Just little things to get rid of blemishes and anything like that. As you can see, we're already looking a little, the skin's looking more clear here. And he should be happier with that image of himself. And that is pretty much the 5 steps for how to retouch an image in Apple Photos. If you'd like to see the difference between what we've done here and the first image, there it is right there. There's the unedited, uncut, everything image. And here's the finalized one. Whereas this one's a little bit dark and doesn't have quite as good detail, this one's more saturated, more crisp, and more worthy to be on your wall. Now, a lot of these steps will be up to you just a little bit. You'll decide how saturated you want things. You can get artistic with it and do different features with photos. That's entirely up to you. But hopefully now you better understand the editing tools in your Apple Photos software and can use them to have the photos that you've always wanted. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.